phone call came at 3 in the morning. Riley Keough was in London finishing a film shoot when her lawyer's voice cut through the darkness with words that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her family. "Riley, you need to see this immediately. Your grandmother has been removed from everything, and I mean everything." The documents he sent over in the next 30 seconds would reveal a family betrayal so calculated, so methodical, that even now, months later, Riley can barely speak about it without her voice breaking. See, what the public saw at Lisa Marie Presley's memorial service in January 2023 was a grieving family united in loss. Priscilla Presley, the eternal queen of Graceland, stood at that podium reading a poem, playing the role of devastated mother to perfection. The cameras captured her tears, her trembling hands, her seemingly broken heart, but what those cameras didn't capture was what happened just 2 hours before, in a private room at Graceland where Riley Keough had just discovered something that would change the Presley dynasty forever. The amended trust documents were dated 2016, but they'd been hidden, buried in a safety deposit box that Lisa Marie had secretly maintained without telling anyone except Riley. And what those documents revealed was explosive beyond imagination. Every single position of power that Priscilla Presley had held, every financial control she'd maintained over the Elvis empire, had been systematically and deliberately stripped away. Lisa Marie hadn't just removed her mother as a trustee, she'd essentially erased her from the family's financial future entirely. But here's where it gets truly dark. Riley's discovery came with something else, something that made her blood run cold. There were recordings. Hours and hours of recordings that Lisa Marie had made, documenting conversations, confrontations, and confessions that painted a picture of family dysfunction so severe that it makes Dynasty look like a sitcom. In one particularly chilling recording from November 2022, just 2 months before her death, Lisa Marie's voice can be heard saying, "She's already taken enough. When I'm gone, Riley, you make sure she doesn't take anything else. Promise me." The estate itself was valued at $35 million, though insiders suggest the real number, when you factor in future royalties and hidden assets, could be triple that amount. And Priscilla, who'd controlled Elvis's estate for decades after his death, who'd built Graceland into the tourist empire it became, suddenly found herself completely locked out. No signature power, no decision-making authority, no access to the vault of Elvis artifacts worth hundreds of millions. Nothing. Financial forensics experts hired by Riley's legal team had uncovered something even more disturbing in the weeks following Lisa Marie's death. There were discrepancies, massive ones, in how certain estate funds had been managed over the years. Transactions that didn't add up, memorabilia that had mysteriously vanished from inventory lists, and licensing deals that seemed to benefit everyone except Lisa Marie and her children. One source close to the investigation described it as systematic wealth extraction disguised as estate management. The morning of the memorial, when Priscilla learned about her removal, witnesses say the confrontation between grandmother and granddaughter was unlike anything the family had ever seen. Priscilla, who'd maintained her composure through Elvis's death, through Lisa Marie's marriages and divorces, through every scandal that had rocked the Presley name, completely lost it. She accused Riley of manipulation, of poisoning Lisa Marie against her, of destroying a legacy she'd spent 46 years building. Riley's response was calm but devastating. She simply pulled out her phone and played one of her mother's recordings. The room went silent. What that recording contained remains a closely guarded secret, but whatever Lisa Marie's voice revealed in that moment was enough to end the conversation immediately. Priscilla left the room, and when she appeared at the podium hours later for the public memorial, the family dynamic had fundamentally shifted. The Queen of Graceland had been dethroned, and everybody in that room knew it. But the real question, the one that would consume the family in the coming months, was simple yet terrifying. What secrets had Lisa Marie taken to her grave, and what other bombs had she left behind, waiting to explode? The amendment was handwritten in blue ink, Lisa Marie's distinctive scrawl unmistakable even to the forensic document experts Priscilla would later hire in desperation. Dated March 11, 2016, it removed Priscilla Presley and Barry Siegel as co-trustees, replacing them with Riley and Benjamin Keough. But Benjamin was gone now, dead by his own hand in 2020, which meant Riley stood alone as the sole heir to an empire built on rock and roll royalty. The timing of this discovery wasn't coincidental, it was surgical. For 46 years, Priscilla had been the undisputed architect of Elvis's posthumous empire. She'd transformed Graceland from a private residence hemorrhaging $700,000 annually into a money-printing machine worth over $500 million. She'd negotiated the deals, approved the merchandise, controlled the narrative. Every Elvis documentary, every biopic, every licensing agreement bore her fingerprints. But beneath that polished exterior of business acumen, something far darker had been brewing. Something Lisa Marie had discovered that changed everything. The $13 million loan was supposed to be a secret. Priscilla had arranged it through a company called Nosany Investments, using Graceland itself as collateral. When Riley's forensic accountants traced the money, what they found sent shockwaves through the legal team. The funds had been dispersed across multiple accounts, some leading to business ventures that had nothing to do with the Presley estate, others simply vanishing into offshore accounts that would take months to trace. Lisa Marie had discovered this in late 2015, and suddenly that 2016 trust amendment made perfect sense. But the financial betrayals went deeper than anyone imagined. Riley's investigation uncovered a pattern of missing artifacts that read like a greatest hits collection of Elvis memorabilia. The white jumpsuit from the Aloha from Hawaii concert, valued at over $2 million, had mysteriously disappeared from the Graceland archives in 2018. Multiple gold records, personal jewelry, even handwritten lyrics had vanished without explanation. The insurance claims were never filed, the police were never called, and when Riley confronted Priscilla about these disappearances, her grandmother's response was telling. She immediately hired a criminal defense attorney. The secret meetings between Riley and the estate lawyers began in October 2022, 3 months before Lisa Marie's death. They'd gather at a private office in Nashville, away from Priscilla's network of informants at Graceland. The lawyers presented evidence that would make any prosecutor salivate: unauthorized contracts, forged signatures, diverted royalty payments. One particularly damning document showed Priscilla had been negotiating a massive deal with a streaming service for an Elvis documentary series, negotiating as if she had full authority when legally she had none. The deal would have netted her personally over $8 million in producer fees. The confrontation at Lisa Marie's hospital bedside in January 2023 was the breaking point. Priscilla had arrived with papers, trying to get her dying daughter to sign over power of attorney. Riley walked in just as her grandmother was guiding Lisa Marie's barely conscious hand toward the signature line. The screaming match that followed brought security, but what really ended everything was what Lisa Marie managed to whisper when she briefly regained consciousness. Looking directly at Priscilla, she said 5 words that would echo through the family forever. "You killed him, didn't you?" Nobody speaks about what those words meant, but Riley knew. She'd found the letters, the ones Elvis had written in his final months, expressing fear and paranoia about the people around him. Letters that Priscilla had hidden for 46 years. Letters that suggested Elvis's death might not have been the accidental overdose the world believed. Benjamin had found these letters first, back in 2019, and the weight of that discovery had contributed to his spiral into depression. He'd confronted Priscilla, threatened to go public, and then suddenly decided to remain silent. A year later, he was dead. The Graceland board meeting in February 2023 was meant to be Priscilla's comeback, her chance to contest the trust amendment in front of Elvis's old business partners. She walked in confident, armed with her own lawyers and documents. She walked out destroyed. Riley had played her final card, a recording of Elvis himself, made just weeks before his death, expressing his desire that Priscilla never control his estate if something happened to him. The recording had been in Lisa Marie's possession all along, waiting for the right moment. That moment had finally come, and with it, the complete destruction of Priscilla Presley's carefully constructed kingdom. The text messages started coming in rapid-fire bursts at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Riley would wake to find dozens of them from her mother, each one more cryptic and urgent than the last. "She's doing it again. Check the auction houses. Don't let her near the twins." The vault combination has been changed. Only you should have it. These weren't the paranoid ramblings of a troubled woman. These were warnings from someone who'd finally seen the full picture of a decades-long deception, and Lisa Marie was running out of time to protect what was left. The Golden Globes incident in January 2022 should have been a celebration. Austin Butler had just won for playing Elvis, and the Presley women were there together, supposedly united in pride. But backstage, something happened that multiple witnesses still refuse to discuss on record. Lisa Marie had discovered just hours before the ceremony that Priscilla had been shopping a tell-all memoir to publishers, a memoir that would expose Lisa Marie's struggles with addiction, her failed marriages, and most devastatingly private details about Benjamin's final days. The confrontation was so intense that security nearly intervened, and Lisa Marie's slurred speech that night wasn't from substances, it was from barely controlled rage. What Priscilla didn't know was that Lisa Marie had been documenting everything for months. Every conversation was recorded on her phone, every financial discrepancy photographed, every suspicious document scanned and stored in a digital vault that only Riley could access. The coded messages to Riley weren't paranoid delusions. They were a mother preparing her daughter for war. Protecting the legacy became their shorthand for keeping Priscilla from selling off the family's history piece by piece. And the evidence Lisa Marie gathered was damning beyond belief. The memoir deal was just the tip of the iceberg. Priscilla had been negotiating with multiple production companies, selling rights to stories that weren't hers to tell. She'd promised exclusive access to Lisa Marie's personal journals, to Benjamin's music recordings, even to home videos of the twins growing up. The advances she'd collected ran into the millions, money that should have gone to the estate but instead disappeared into accounts Lisa Marie couldn't trace. One producer later admitted that Priscilla had promised them something extraordinary, the real story of Elvis's death, something she claimed only she knew. The intervention attempt in November 2022 was Priscilla's masterstroke, or so she thought. She'd gathered family friends, business associates, even hired a documentary crew to film what she called an act of love for her troubled daughter. But Lisa Marie had been tipped off by Riley and arrived prepared. Instead of the broken woman Priscilla expected to ambush, Lisa Marie walked in with her own lawyer and a folder of evidence that turned the intervention on its head. Bank statements showing Priscilla's unauthorized withdrawals, contracts with forged signatures, even surveillance footage from Graceland showing Priscilla removing items from the archives after hours. The financial records were the smoking gun. Over $3 million had been siphoned from various estate accounts over just 18 months, always in amounts small enough to avoid triggering alerts, always justified with vague expense reports that mentioned preservation costs or legacy management. But when Lisa Marie's forensic accountant traced the money, it led to Priscilla's personal investments, a boutique in Beverly Hills, a documentary production company, even a down payment on a Manhattan apartment. The estate had been funding Priscilla's entire lifestyle while Lisa Marie struggled to pay for her children's education. On her deathbed, barely conscious but still fighting, Lisa Marie made Riley promise something that would haunt her forever. She pulled her daughter close and whispered instructions about a safety deposit box at a specific bank, one that contained what Lisa Marie called the insurance policy. Inside, Riley would later find a sealed letter dated December 2022, just weeks before Lisa Marie's death. The letter explicitly stated that under no circumstances should Priscilla Presley have any control over the estate, access to the grandchildren's trusts, or authority to speak for the family. But it was the last line that chilled Riley to the bone. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. She's been planning this for years. The letter also contained something else, a USB drive with hundreds of hours of recordings, including conversations where Priscilla discussed her plans to contest any will that excluded her, her strategies for gaining conservatorship over the twins, and most disturbingly, her conversations with doctors about Lisa Marie's mental state. The woman who'd controlled Elvis's legacy for nearly half a century had been preparing to do the same thing to her daughter, but Lisa Marie had beaten her to the punch. The war was over before Priscilla even knew it had begun. The settlement number that leaked to the press was $1 million, a figure that made Priscilla's supporters celebrate her supposed victory. But Riley Keough knows the truth, and she's finally ready to reveal it. That million wasn't a settlement, it was hush money, a carefully calculated sum designed to buy Priscilla's silence and cooperation. The real terms of their agreement are so restrictive, so completely devastating to Priscilla's control, that her own lawyers advised her to take the money and disappear. She took the money, but disappearing would prove impossible for someone who'd spent 5 decades in Elvis's spotlight. The new Graceland board that Riley assembled reads like a who's who of entertainment power players who have zero loyalty to Priscilla Presley. There's Joel Weinshanker, the film producer who'd been quietly documenting Priscilla's financial irregularities for years. There's Jack Soden, who'd witnessed firsthand Priscilla's attempts to sell off Elvis artifacts without proper authorization. And most surprisingly, there's someone from the Jackson estate brought in specifically because they dealt with similar family warfare after Michael's death. Every single person at that table has one mandate from Riley: protect the legacy from those who would exploit it, even if that means protecting it from blood relatives. Harper and Finley Lockwood, Lisa Marie's 14-year-old twins, became Riley's greatest responsibility and Priscilla's biggest target. The trust funds Lisa Marie had established for them were worth approximately $30 million each, money that would become accessible when they turned 25. But buried in Priscilla's contested filing was an attempt to gain financial conservatorship over the girls, citing their need for a stable grandmother figure. What she didn't mention was her plan to leverage their inheritance for her own business ventures, a plan Riley discovered in email exchanges between Priscilla and her financial advisors. Those emails now sit in a safe, ready to be released if Priscilla ever violates the terms of their agreement. The documentary that's currently in production, the one Priscilla has been frantically trying to block through cease and desist letters, contains interviews with people who've never spoken publicly before. Elvis's former bodyguards, who described Priscilla's systematic isolation of Elvis in his final years. Household staff who witnessed her removing items from Graceland while Elvis lay dying upstairs. Even former business partners who recall Priscilla's chilling comment at Elvis's funeral, "Now I can finally do things my way." Riley has given the filmmakers unprecedented access to the vault, to the recordings, to the evidence that rewrites the entire Presley narrative. But perhaps the most shocking revelation is what Riley discovered about Elvis's original will, the one supposedly lost in the chaos after his death. It wasn't lost. Priscilla had it all along, hidden in a private safe that Riley only learned about through Benjamin's journals. That will explicitly stated that Priscilla should receive a modest annual allowance but no control over the estate or Graceland. It named Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, as executor, with Lisa Marie as sole heir. When Vernon died, Priscilla somehow emerged with executor powers that the original will never granted. The forensic document experts Riley hired called it one of the most sophisticated acts of estate manipulation they'd ever encountered. Celebrity witnesses are starting to break their silence now that Priscilla's power has crumbled. Nicolas Cage, who was married to Lisa Marie, has provided sworn testimony about Priscilla's attempts to sabotage their relationship when Lisa Marie began questioning her mother's financial dealings. Michael Jackson's former manager has come forward with recordings of Priscilla trying to broker deals using Lisa Marie's connection to Michael, deals Lisa Marie knew nothing about. Even some of Elvis's Memphis Mafia have finally felt safe enough to speak about what they really saw in those final days at Graceland. The family events from which Priscilla Presley has been systematically banned aren't merely symbolic gestures or petty acts of revenge. They represent legally enforced boundaries established through ironclad agreements drafted by teams of attorneys. These restrictions carry the full weight of contract law, backed by provisions that ensure compliance through severe financial and legal penalties for any violation. Priscilla cannot attend any Graceland board meetings where critical decisions about Elvis's estate and legacy are debated and determined. She is barred from any official Elvis Presley Enterprises functions, the corporate gatherings where business strategy is discussed and multi-million-dollar deals are negotiated. Most painfully, perhaps, she cannot attend any events involving her own twin grandchildren without Riley's explicit written permission, a requirement that transforms what should be natural family interactions into formal transactions requiring advance approval and documentation. The woman who once wielded absolute control over every aspect of Elvis's posthumous legacy, who made executive decisions about his image, his music catalog, his merchandise, and his estate for decades, now finds herself stripped of authority and access. She cannot even enter Graceland, the mansion that became synonymous with her role as Elvis's widow and the keeper of his memory, without scheduling an appointment like any common tourist or business associate. The reversal is complete and humiliating. A dramatic fall from power that few could have predicted just years earlier. But it's Riley's final ultimatum that truly and definitively ends Priscilla's reign over the Presley empire. The terms are unambiguous and devastating. Any attempt to contest the current arrangement through legal channels, any violation of their carefully negotiated agreement, any unauthorized interview with media outlets, or any book deal that discusses family matters without prior approval, and Riley will release everything she has carefully compiled and secured. The threat is not empty posturing. Riley possesses recordings, audio, and possibly video evidence that documents conversations, admissions, and contradictions. She holds financial evidence that traces money flows, questionable transactions, and accounting irregularities spanning years or even decades. She has secured documents that prove Priscilla's pattern of deception, manipulation, and self-serving decisions that prioritized personal profit over the authentic preservation of Elvis's legacy and the financial well-being of his direct descendants. This arsenal of damning material ensures Priscilla's compliance through mutually assured destruction. If she challenges Riley's authority or violates their agreement, the resulting exposure won't just damage her reputation, it could trigger criminal investigations, civil lawsuits from other parties who were defrauded, and the complete demolition of the carefully cultivated public image she has maintained since Elvis's death in 1977. Riley's approach reflects a fundamental principle that she has made crystal clear to everyone involved in the Presley dynasty: blood family comes first. But in Riley's interpretation, blood doesn't extend protection or privilege to those who have spilled it, metaphorically or otherwise, for personal profit. Those who exploited their connection to Elvis for financial gain while betraying the interests of his direct bloodline have forfeited any claim to family loyalty or consideration. The message is unambiguous and final. Priscilla's decades-long reign as the guardian of Elvis's legacy has ended. The Queen has been deposed, her power stripped away, her access revoked, and her options for recourse eliminated through a combination of legal agreements and the threat of mutually assured destruction. Long live Riley, the rightful heir who has reclaimed control of her grandfather's empire and restored the principle that true blood inheritance cannot be usurped by those who married into power and then abused it. The Presley family civil war has concluded with a decisive victor, and the new order has been established. In the world of celebrity estates and dynastic wealth, this battle will be studied for years as an example of how a determined heir can reclaim what was taken and restore proper succession, even decades after the original injustice occurred.